The NFL is loaded with talent at the quarterback position, from rocket arms to pinpoint accuracy and clutch performances. This list is going to spark some debates. First, we got the F tier. These are the quarterbacks. If your favorite team's going against them, you feel a sense of relief. Deshaun Watson, he ruptured his Achilles in October from last season and then re-injured the same Achilles in January. Watson hasn't been downright terrible in Cleveland, but every time he plays, they fail to put up points, and he's been nowhere near the QB he was in Houston. His decision making and accuracy has been bad the past 2 seasons. Because of the recent injuries and his lackluster play on the field, his entire NFL career is in jeopardy. Will Levis, he has a lot of talent, but he doesn't have accuracy. Through his first 2 seasons, Will Levis has a total of 22 touchdowns to 23 turnovers. That is terrible for a starting quarterback to have more turnovers than total touchdowns. He makes incredible throws every once in a while, and it'll make you completely understand why the Tennessee Titans continue to give him a chance to be their starter. His replacement, though, might already be coming through the draft. If this happens, I don't think he'll start for another NFL franchise. Anthony Richardson, by far, is the most polarizing top 5 pick I can remember. While he has the talent to be top 5 on this list, he found himself in the bottom 5 of our list. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Very injury prone, so he doesn't even have time to develop, and we already knew he needed lots of development. He relies way too much on his physical ability and trying to make those chunk plays. In the NFL, you have to be more methodical and you have to be able to play within a system. Richardson has so much talent, I wouldn't be shocked if he completely proves me wrong and has a successful NFL career, but in the very same sentence, I would bet money that he doesn't. Over the past year, the hype around Kirk Cousins has gone from 100 to 0. With the Falcons having the foresight to draft Michael Penix, they are in no way tied to Kirk Cousins and he knows it. But it is about time Kirk pays for finessing all those NFL teams out their money. Both teams are working on a restructured deal to keep Kirk in Atlanta as the backup QB. With Kirk losing arm strength after his injury and showing bad decision making outside that quarterback system in Minnesota, being a backup / mentor to Michael Penix isn't the worst option. Last for the F tier, we do have Daniel Jones, who isn't currently a starting quarterback, but according to many reports, he could potentially be playing for an NFL franchise as the starter next season. I don't have too many bad things to say about Daniel Jones because he always used to play well against my team. I know he's not a good quarterback, but for some reason against the Washington Commanders, that man goes crazy every time. Throughout his career, he's been average though, with flashes of very good quarterback play. I think we all can admit he hasn't been downright terrible, but I do know he is not the guy. I'm not saying that he is going to make any franchise any better. But and yes, he does make bad decisions. He does turn the ball over more than you like, except for that one season when he was playing for the contract extension. Like I said, he isn't the guy, but I do honestly think Daniel Jones, talent-wise, maybe even career-wise, is more of a D-tier guy. But if you're cut by the New York Giants mid-season, you are automatically F-tier. All right, so next we're moving up to the D-tier. These guys are solid, but they just aren't it. Like, they're supposed to be it, or at one point people really thought they were it or going to be it, and they just aren't. So starting off with Trevor Lawrence. Even back when he was in Clemson, I just did not understand the hype around this man. He throws a good ball, like he looks good when he throws the ball in terms of it looks like a nice release, like it looks natural. But none of that matters. He's had 5 years to prove to everybody that he is the guy, that he is supposed to be the Jaguars franchise quarterback. And we cannot say Jacksonville has not given him help. They have tried throughout the offseason to give him lots of help, pairing him with Travis Etienne, which obviously didn't work out for different reasons, bringing in receiver after receiver after receiver, whether it's a veteran, whether it's a rookie. So they did their part. I'm not saying it's perfect. The O-line could definitely be better. Also the coaching. But they have a very soft division relative to all these other NFL teams. You can't tell me if Trevor Lawrence was that guy, he wouldn't have done more than he has so far. I'm not going to say his career is done, but for me personally, and maybe even for Jacksonville, he has one more year to prove himself before I'm ready to just completely write him off. Speaking of writing them off, you have done so much to push the game forward, so I will give you your respect in that regard. But it's time to hang it up, man. When the New York Jets do not want you to be their quarterback anymore, it's time to hang it up. And I don't know realistically what team would want to bring you in at this stage of your career. With Aaron Rodgers, you're not going to win a Super Bowl at this point. You might not even make the playoffs with this form of Aaron Rodgers. Statistically, he's always going to look good, but what you guys need to understand, it's way more than just the stats with these quarterbacks. It's about when they make the plays happen. It's about how often and consistently they make the plays happen. Aaron Rodgers has gone through so many injuries. He has not done himself a favor with some of his antics throughout his career. And at this point, he is just not in a place where he's going to bring any team any real fortune. I could see a world where the Jets give him one more chance, but I'm telling y'all now, it's just not going to work out. Same thing with Russell Wilson. I think he honestly has more of the tank than Aaron Rodgers. And if the Steelers were to bring him back and let him start, which apparently they are not doing that, they're planning to go with Justin Fields, it looks like. I could see Russell Wilson having another year like he did this year. A year where you have to respect what he's doing. He's putting up some good stats, but when they get to the playoffs, they would struggle again. So the writing is pretty much on the wall with this team. I completely understand why they're potentially leaving off of Russell Wilson, at least according to reports. It's just time to, move forward with not only a younger quarterback, but just give Russell Wilson a chance to make amends elsewhere. If Russell Wilson doesn't have a crazy year in 2025, I think moving forward, he's a backup quarterback if he's not a backup this year already. Justin Fields might be the most interesting name on this list. And I'm only saying that because me personally, I don't believe that he will be a caliber starting quarterback. You can ask John. Like, I told him that, I just don't see Justin Fields being that guy in the NFL. Like, I said that back when he was in Ohio State balling, like 6 touchdowns in the national championship. Back then he just wasn't getting the ball out on time. A lot of those same issues I had with Justin Fields coming out of college, he brought them into the NFL and wasn't really able to fix it. There's something really weird about his mechanics, in my opinion. They have gotten better, specifically in Pittsburgh. I like what they were able to do with them. You could tell they coached him up. But he's still just not the quarterback I would want. And I don't expect any team with Justin Fields starting the entire season to actually do well in the playoffs. Like, I don't expect him to be the reason why any team gets far in the playoffs. And that's not to say he can't prove me wrong, but I just don't see it. All right, so we are in the C tier, and as you can see, it is very congested. So starting with Derek Carr, he's had a solid NFL career in terms of longevity. He has a ton of respect among the NFL veterans, but he has never been able to elevate a franchise into true contention. He has never been the reason, even those 2 or 3 seasons where he played like a top 10, maybe even a top 5 quarterback. He's never been the reason why the Raiders or the Saints went far into the playoffs. After you've had 10 seasons to prove yourself and to prove you can carry a team that far, if you haven't done it, we have the right to judge you accordingly. Michael Penix, it was really hard to rate him because I do believe in his future long term. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. I have no solid reason to give you other than I've seen him play throughout those 3 games at the end of the season. Yes, Atlanta still had a little bit of something to play for. In case certain teams lost, they would have been in position to lead them into the playoff race. So with that being said, he didn't do anything amazing, in my opinion, but he was definitely better than Kirk Cousins, and you could definitely see he was worthy of a first-round selection. Everything I said about Michael Penix, you could literally apply to Drake May here, except for the fact we do have more of a sample size to evaluate. So with Drake May, you have a combination of rare arm talent with pretty good running as well. He has a lot of talent, and the reason the Patriots were bad this season, it wasn't on him, to be honest. Same thing with Derek Carr, though. If throughout his career, he's constantly not elevating the Patriots or whatever team he's on, I'll have to be fair and give him the same critique I just gave Derek. But he is a rookie. He showed a lot of flashes, and I could definitely see why New England took him 3rd overall. And honestly, I think he'll have a great career. The only reason he's still at C tier, he didn't do enough, in my opinion, to clearly establish him above some other names we're going to talk about. But he's definitely earned my respect and the respect of many NFL fans. Kyler Murray, I don't think he'll ever win a Super Bowl, but he's too good to put him in D tier. There's a lot of merit to saying that he's a September, October quarterback, and sitting at 5'10", me being 5'10", I want him to break that narrative, but he significantly struggles in November, December, January. I don't know what it is, or if at that point he's just banged up, or if he really just can't play in the cold. And it can't be Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders, because he's now with the Washington Commanders. At first they used to blame him back when he was in Arizona, but it clearly has to be Kyler Murray or someone else on that offense. Hopefully next year he figures it out, because like I said, he is really talented, and I don't think that he is the reason why Arizona doesn't do as well as they could or arguably should. Bryce Young had a little bit of an opposite effect. So after getting benched and having his career in jeopardy, people calling him a bust, really just trying to trash him. He gets a chance to start one more time for the Panthers. He really balls out. He was playing like a top 12 quarterback, arguably, throughout the second half of the season. So I'm really curious to see if he's able to keep that up. Long term, I have no idea how Bryce Young will perform. I could definitely see him continuing to be a very solid quarterback, but especially being in Carolina, I just don't see him being a upper echelon level guy. But coming out of Alabama, a lot of people really did think Bryce Young would be a generational level talent. So from that standpoint, I have to put him in the C tier. He's definitely not shown generational level of excellence at that quarterback position, but he is not a bust, and I think this year proved that. And no, he's not CJ Stroud level yet either, but he's a lot closer than we thought. Sam Darnold is I don't even know what to say about Sam. Those last two games that he played, it literally took 100 million plus out of his pocket. And not everything was on him. The offensive line was atrocious, but the decisions he made were just terrible. And it's really unfortunate. I guess fortunate if you're a Vikings fan because you didn't get duped into a long-term extension and you do still have JJ McCarthy. So I'm very curious to see what happens with Sam Darnold and how he performs next season, or if he even has a chance to. I never blamed him for not being as great in New York. I mean, I don't expect any quarterback to be that good in New York, whether it's the Jets or the Giants. But, Sam Darnold, he literally proved the media right, in terms of pretty much when it matters, he would fall apart. And I was honestly rooting for him, not because I know him or anything like that, but I don't think he's as bad of a quarterback as some people say. I definitely don't think he's as good of a quarterback as some people say, as you see here. 18th best quarterback in the league, and I think that's pretty accurate. I think that's about what he is right now. Caleb Williams. On one hand, he has incredible talent. He makes plays that only 3 other players in the league could make. And yes, I do mean that in terms of, just magic ability to make things happen. Some of the things he did, even in his rookie season, were incredible plays. But with that being said, when your team loses 11 straight games, you can't be any higher than C tier. And he had a terrible start to the year. With that being said, though, people were being very hard on Caleb just because other rookies were playing better than him at the time, and just because of so much hype and pressure that was put on his shoulders. But I have to say, his rookie season, once you ignore the hype and once you just really channel in on what he did and really focus on his improvement from the start to end, he had a good rookie year. And I don't think that's even a debate, especially considering his head coach was fired mid-season. It's just a lot for a rookie quarterback to have to deal with. And yes, he had a lot of great weapons. People said it was the greatest situation to step in, but his offensive line was just downright awful. There were probably only 3 games all season where I could say the offensive line of Chicago was actually doing well. And if you're a rookie quarterback, that shouldn't be a thing. You should have at least decent quarterback play throughout your rookie season so that you can develop, so that you can gain that confidence, not only in yourself, but in the system that you're being asked to run. Because if in the back of your head you feel like you have to scramble and, protect yourself, you're not going to be able to make plays downfield. And that's the main thing we saw with Caleb. And I do think with new coaching, we'll see an even better Caleb Williams next year. All right, so Dak Prescott, if you ask me as a Washington fan, I used to think he was a lot better than even Dallas fans thought he was. But after seeing him play and really locking in on every game Dallas plays, he is more of an average quarterback than the national media thinks. He's not this top tier guy that a lot of people might say he is. Maybe he was at one point, but his play lately has proven he isn't. Even before his injury last season, he just was not playing like a good quarterback. You could even argue that his backup outperformed him, but I won't even get into that. All I'm going to say is that Dak Prescott doesn't scare me as a Commander fan. I don't go into any Dallas game thinking, dang, Dak is going to tear us up. We got to really make sure Dak Prescott doesn't beat us. And that's not saying that he doesn't make good plays or that he hasn't gone off against us in the past. But going into 2025, I do think he's closer to that C tier than that A tier that a lot of teams and a lot of people might have him at. All right, here we go. We are now in the B tier list of quarterbacks. These are the quarterbacks who have the talent, in my opinion, to win it all. And honestly, the C tier, they have the talent to do it as well, but I would honestly be even less surprised if these guys do it. Maybe not so much Geno Smith, but he does have a lot of talent. He is a prolific passer. Seattle, they have the potential to really be something more if they were able to be more consistent. And a lot of that does start with Geno Smith. I do think he is more consistent than not, but he's still not consistent enough. With that in mind, it wasn't his fault for a lot of the situations going on. They were dealing with a lot of injuries. They were dealing with, just inconsistency, not only from him, but just from really everybody, including DK Metcalf, including Jackson Smith and Jigbo. So all around a down year for everybody, but I think Geno Smith proved over the past 2 seasons, he is at least slightly above average in terms of NFL quarterback play. And I would bet he has at least one pretty solid season before he potentially starts to regress. Now, Bo Nix, I have a lot of respect for this man because honestly, he proved a lot of people wrong. There were certain people, even when he was balling out, not giving him his respect. He's been doing it without a lot of top tier weapons. A lot of people talk about how great other quarterbacks perform without top tier weapons. Well, we need to give that same respect to Bo Nix. He doesn't have a top tier running game, a top tier O-line, or a top tier receiving core. And he's still able to ball out and take his team to the postseason in the AFC. That is a very big deal. And to be honest, he could potentially be ahead of Brock Purdy, ahead of Justin Herbert. But it's only one season, and I do want to see what else he does before he takes an even farther leap into the B tier, or even potentially be A tier. So we'll have to just wait and see. Now, Brock Purdy, from almost beating Patrick Mahomes in overtime of the Super Bowl to missing the playoffs and having a slightly down year, I don't even blame him for the slightly down year, to be honest. Of course, he had something to do with that. But when your best receiver gets hurt for the year, and when Deebo Samuel's dealing with a slump, not in shape, and honestly, he was never the best route runner anyway, and yes, he is now a Washington Commander, but I always keep it real, I can't expect you to ball out like you did your previous season. He still wasn't the reason his team didn't perform, but he wasn't the reason his team could advance, so he was basically playing more of an average quarterback level of play. If you were a Brock Purdy doubter before this season, you are feeling very confident about your opinion right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if Brock Purdy rebounds this season. I do think they have some good weapons at the receiving core, even after Deebo Samuel left. As long as Ayuk is healthy, they should be fine there. And then, of course, they'll always have a solid running game. I think Christian McCaffrey should be ready to go next season. We'll have to wait and see. Kyle Shanahan has always been a mastermind at the offensive end, so they should be okay. As long as Brock Purdy is that guy and he's not thinking about this contract extension and thinking about the outside noise and all that, he should have another good season. And I do think B tier is right about where he deserves to be. I wanted to put Justin Herbert at C tier at first, but this past season, I have to say he did play really well. Now, he had a meltdown in the playoffs, and it kind of proved me right as far as, yeah, he's just not that guy. And by the way, there is no quarterback in the B tier who honestly I think is that guy. So in other words, I don't think none of these quarterbacks are the reason why you win a Super Bowl. But I do think they won't hurt you from winning a Super Bowl at all. So if you have the steady run game, the top tier defense, the weapons, the coaching, everything you need, as long as they're not turning the ball over, I do think they could win you a Super Bowl. And yes, of course, any quarterback on this list in that scenario, if they're not turning the ball over, could win a Super Bowl. My only point is, outside of being a game manager, I do think every quarterback in the B tier, they have enough talent on their own to do just enough, as long as everything else around them was working out the way it was supposed to. Now, with that being said, every quarterback in the A tier and the S tier, they are plus multipliers. These are the players that you want on your team. You trade whatever it takes to get them as long as they're a certain age. If you are, for example, the New York Giants or the Tennessee Titans, a team that, you are just desperate for great quarterback play, these quarterbacks in the A tier and the S tier, these would be the guys you would trade everything you own for. Starting with CJ Stroud. After his sophomore slump, yes, he is still A tier because he did this without any top weapons. CJ Stroud took his team to the divisional round again without his top 3 weapons. He dealt with all the media noise. And yes, some of it he deserved. Putting himself in the top 5 in the offseason wasn't the smartest move. Trying to sun Caleb Williams on live television wasn't the best move. At the end of the day, CJ Stroud is very talented. I don't think anybody will argue that he is clearly a franchise quarterback. I expect him to win a Super Bowl. And if he doesn't win a Super Bowl at least once in his career, it'll be a disappointment. But that won't say anything bad about him. I don't want him to go down the Phillip Rivers route. I want him to at least get one. I do think he's talented enough to do so. We'll have to wait and see. Baker Mayfield is a quarterback who deserves a lot more respect from everybody who pretty much covers the game, because they don't talk about how good Baker's been really his entire career. He had one season in Cleveland where he wasn't as good because he was playing through injury and he was dealing with a lot of scrutiny, and he was kind of bringing on that scrutiny by his own actions. But with that being said, he was still playing decent enough. Cleveland should have just kept him, but of course they were listening to the outside noise and decided to spend $230 million guaranteed on Deshaun Watson, and we see how that has turned out. Baker Mayfield, he could have easily been a lot farther in the playoffs this year. Fortunately, Washington Commanders just took care of business, just went against a better team. Throughout his career, Baker Mayfield has always played with a chip on his shoulder. He's always understood that even though people aren't going to believe in me, that's more of a superpower for me. I don't need them to believe in me as long as I believe in myself. And I do think that's the reason why he's able to elevate as high as he does. Honestly, I have a lot of respect for him. I've always thought he was a good quarterback and never understood why Cleveland got rid of him. Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, is still A tier, just because when it matters, you know he will deliver. I am very surprised that the Rams are letting him explore trade options. Maybe they have a succession plan in the draft, or maybe even on their roster. But if I were the Rams, I would let Matt Stafford go the Tom Brady route. Literally, he could stay as long as he wants, as long as he's healthy. If he's not healthy, I could completely understand what the Rams are doing. Maybe there's something we don't know. But I would think after a full offseason, he would be ready to go this upcoming season and able to get them into another, potentially at least another divisional round, maybe get them another ring. But if they see it differently, hopefully he can show the Rams, hey, I'm still that guy. Jared Goff, honestly, I'm a Commander fan, but I still feel bad for the fact he had a total meltdown against us. It felt like Detroit just knew they were going to beat us. And Jared Goff was playing so well. Like, he was literally an MVP candidate throughout most of the season. And to be honest, even after his playoff performance, I do believe if he had another shot, let's say this upcoming season to get into the playoffs, I do think he'll make amends for what he did in this past playoffs and play well. That's how much I personally believe in Jared Goff. At the same time, I don't believe in him enough I wouldn't bet anybody, hey, this man's going to win a Super Bowl. Because I do think he has a little bit of that Sam Darnold syndrome in him. When the moment gets too big, he does kind of tend to freeze up. But I don't think that's him as a person per se. I just think he can be that person, if that makes sense. But I also think he could be that person who does just enough to let your team win and make a few plays here and there, even in a playoff situation. Jared Goff, it's very conflicting because, as you can see, I have him as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. So on one hand, you have to say, I believe in him. But on the other hand, when it comes to those huge moments, like I'm talking Super Bowl level moments, or, when everybody in the media is saying, oh, the Lions are going to crush this team, I do think in those moments, Jared Goff does freeze up. Those moments don't come around too often, but they're going to come around every season. And that's the thing with Jared Goff. You are a top tier quarterback in terms of talent. You have underrated arm strength, but your accuracy kind of goes every now and then. But for the most part, you have great accuracy too. With his OC gone, I honestly hope he's able to still maintain the same level of play as he has throughout the regular season. It is possible he takes a step back. I have a lot of respect for his game, and I respect him enough to have him in A tier, even after that terrible playoff performance. Super Bowl winning quarterback Jalen Hurts, yes, he is still in the A tier. He's a great quarterback. Honestly, he's a great quarterback. But there are 5 quarterbacks in the S tier that I do think they are force multipliers. These are quarterbacks, if they don't win a Super Bowl in their career, it's a failure because they are that good. Literally, just because you have this quarterback on your team, you have a chance to win the Super Bowl. So that's the difference between A tier and S tier. Any quarterback that's in the A tier, they need their weapons at their disposal to win it all. But these quarterbacks in the S tier, they can survive any roster and still perform well. Jalen Hurts is very underrated in terms of his passing ability. He doesn't pass it as much because they don't need to pass it as much, and they're more successful when they don't. So why would he pass it 50 times a game? With that being said, Jalen Hurts does have moments where his passing is not as great. And yes, A.J. Brown, for example, did voice frustration over his lack of targets and basically saying the passing game needs to be better, which is saying Jalen Hurts needs to be better. I acknowledge all that, which is why he's in the A tier. This guy is still a winner, and he performs best when it matters most. In both Super Bowls, he killed it. This Super Bowl, he honestly wasn't even as good, but they still got the blowout win anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So overall, I have nothing bad to say about Jalen Hurts. He doesn't even turn the ball over that much. Yes, it would be nice to see him throw for 300 yards, constantly make deep passes. Yeah, it would be exciting, but if it's not helping his team win, I can't fault him for that. If he's going to consistently win the game and then always make a throw or two here and there, that keeps their team in rhythm when they need it. Like, it's not like he's not capable. He just doesn't do it because they don't ask him to. Also, I will say there are times where, yes, he does struggle doing that, but it's never a long-term struggle. It's just a miss or two here and there. And it gets blown out of proportion because he's only throwing the ball, let's say 25, 26 times a game. Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback, whether people realize it or not. But here are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. And yes, Jaden Daniels is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL after one season. When you have the most fourth quarter comeback wins in the NFL, when you literally take one of the worst franchises and you turn them into one of the best franchises in one season without any top tier talent on offense outside of Terry McLaurin, and when you do that with a subpar defense, and when you do all that and then you continue to do all that in the playoffs, the win against Tampa, fourth quarter comeback. The Lions, just a blowout win after everyone was saying they were going to get destroyed. And yes, they got smacked by the Eagles, but to be honest, they ran away in the fourth quarter. Throughout the first 3 quarters, it was a very tight game. And Jaden Daniels played well. He had 1 interception at the very last second, but overall, he showed he could perform in the regular season. He showed he could perform in the postseason, and he showed he has tremendous poise and Hall of Fame level fourth quarter play. Yes, I said it. Hall of Fame level fourth quarter play. He was the best fourth quarter quarterback in the NFL his rookie season. Everything he did in the passing game and the running game, he's top 5. Joe Burrow is number 4, and he would be at least number 2, but the Bengals didn't make the playoffs. There were certain times I would watch the Bengals play, and there was a play or two he could have made when they really needed him to. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that as a form of criticism because, like I said, I like being real. I don't want to hold back just because he's Joe Burrow. But at the same time, he's Joe Burrow. Like, this guy, incredible numbers, but not only that, incredible play on the field. He does things that literally only Josh Allen or Mahomes could do. Maybe they wouldn't even do it as well in some respects. Joe Burrow doesn't have the running ability of any of these quarterbacks in the top 5, but he is so cerebral. His arm strength is amazing. You know, he just continues to be excellent despite his defense, despite anything else going on around him. He is a top 5 quarterback no matter what anyone else might say, no matter if they don't make the playoffs next year. If he continues playing the way he did this past season, he's going to always be top 5 in my book. Josh Allen. It's so unfortunate to have to go against Patrick Mahomes every single year in the AFC Championship because this man deserves a ring. I'm not even going to lie to you. He is very talented. It's so much that he brings to the table in terms of his ability. He is a top 3 runner at the quarterback position, a top 3 passer at the quarterback position, and overall, he's able to do it with or without weapons. I don't think the offensive coordinating in Buffalo is amazing. I do think it's Josh Allen or bust. Without Josh Allen, the Bills are at best an average team. Josh Allen is a top tier talent who deserves way more respect. And I know people give him his respect. It's not like he's an underdog necessarily. But people like to act like, hey, he's 0-4 against Mahomes in the playoffs. He's just not it. Nah, he's it. He's just going against Patrick Mahomes. And if you realize, every single game they play comes down to the wire. It's not like they ever get blown out in the playoffs. It's just, for whatever reason, when it really matters, you know, Kansas City, they're able to turn it up a notch. And it's really unfortunate, but at the same time, it's not like Josh Allen is letting Buffalo down. I think it's a psychological thing. I think the entire team just feels like they can't do it. Kansas City in those moments, if they just feel like they can do it or they're supposed to do it. In some people's eyes, that's lazy analysis, but I truly feel like that's the difference in those moments, in those close fourth quarter games. You know, if you're doubting yourself, you already lost. With that being said, Josh Allen, after a so-so rookie year, he's had an incredible NFL career. He is honestly on the way to being a Hall of Famer. As long as he gets a ring, it's pretty much guaranteed. Lamar Jackson. Everything I said about Josh Allen, you could pretty much attribute it to Lamar, except for the fact, yes, he had a few more weapons, but his stats are just incredible. He had, in my opinion, statistically, the greatest quarterback season of all time. I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback. I'm not saying that he'll ever be, but when he's done playing this game, if he doesn't get hurt, he will without a doubt be a top 10 quarterback of all time. That's if he doesn't win a ring, or if he does. He's really that good. He's one of those players, we're going to appreciate him more when he's gone, more than when he's here. Because as long as he's continuously being Lamar Jackson, you know, and not winning rings, we're not going to respect it as much. We're not going to appreciate it as much. We're not going to have another Lamar Jackson for at least another 30 years. Jaden Daniels is not Lamar Jackson. And what I mean by that, his running game is so dynamic that you can't even really put it, like the stats don't explain it. Yes, he only ran for, let's say, 100 yards more than Jaden Daniels, for example. But his ability to run, it literally changes the entire way the defense plays football. Just him being him changes the way all 11 guys on defense have to communicate. Just having that power on the football field speaks for itself. It explains why I have him even ahead of Josh Allen. Yes, they lost against Buffalo in the past playoff game, but first of all, they blew him out in the regular season, and then Lamar Jackson, he took them to come back, but of course Mark Andrews dropped that pass, and the rest is history. So it's not Lamar Jackson's fault every single year that Baltimore doesn't make it to the promised land. It's a combination of things. And that's the same thing with every quarterback on this list. It's never one person's fault, but someone at the end of the day has to take the blame, and it's always a combination of what did you do when it mattered most, and what are you doing to get your team in that situation. And of course, number one, my homeboy. To be honest, I hate him. I mean, I don't hate him as much because the Eagles blew him out. Shout out to Jalen Hurts for that. I was tired of them winning a lot. You know, I'm glad that they got humbled against Philly. And I'm hoping another AFC team can emerge and, hopefully one of these guys, Lamar, Josh, or Joe, they are able to take them out. I'm really hoping so. But to be honest, I don't care about none of that as long as my Commanders get the win, get the Super Bowl win. That is, at the end of the day, Mahomes, he's number one. I don't even got to explain that. I mean, he's Patrick Mahomes. Statistically, last year he wasn't as great. But am I going to tell you a quarterback who went to 3 straight Super Bowls is not the best quarterback in the NFL or shouldn't be ranked as so, despite a slightly off regular season? I mean, I'm not going to do it. I've always been more of a playoff guy. The playoffs is where you make your legend. That's why we pay you. So if you can't perform in the playoffs, or if you're just not the same guy in the playoffs, it definitely speaks to you as a person, your ability to stay calm and to perform against upper tier talent. With that being said, this is the way too early NFL quarterback tier list. Let me know what I got wrong, or just tell me I got everything right, because I know I did.